What would you do if you found out your family had lied to you for years? Claire never imagined that one simple text would change her life. Christmas was supposed to be a time for family, but instead, she found herself alone, only to discover the shocking truth. Her family had been excluding her for years. Stay tuned to see how Claire takes control and exposes the truth. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Claire, everyone's staying home due to the ice storm. Christmas dinner is canceled. Stay safe. I stared at my phone, feeling the weight of disappointment settle in. But I understood. After all, Nashville winters could be brutal, and an ice storm was no joke. What I didn't know then was that this simple text, so matter-of-fact, would unravel years of family deception and change everything I thought I knew about my place in the world. My name is Claire. I'm 32, an accountant, and until last Christmas, I had always thought I was just the different one, the quiet, career-focused sister who didn't quite fit in with the loud social gatherings of my family. My younger sister Belle was always the star, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. That Christmas morning, I settled in for what I expected would be a quiet, peaceful day alone. I made myself a cup of hot chocolate, turned on some holiday movies, and tried to stay positive, even as the loneliness wrapped around me. At about 3 p.m., I was scrolling through Instagram when my heart stopped. There it was, a new post from my cousin. Perfect family Christmas at Belle's. So blessed to have everyone together. Family traditions, Christmas dinner. The photo showed my entire family, mom, dad, aunts, uncles, cousins, even my grandmother gathered around Belle's perfectly set dining table. They were all smiling, wearing festive sweaters, clearly basking in the warmth of a celebration they had deliberately excluded me from. Through the windows in the background, the skies were clear, sunny. No ice storm. There never had been one. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more pictures. There was my dad, carving the turkey. My mom, arranging her famous Christmas cookies. My little nieces and nephews ripping open presents. It hit me hard the ice storm excuse had been a complete lie, a convenient fabrication to keep me away from their perfect family gathering. Sick to my stomach, I sat there, feeling the truth seep in like poison. All those times they told me events were canceled, all those intimate dinners I wasn't invited to, how many of them had actually happened without me? How long had they been orchestrating behind my back, excluding me while pretending to care? The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mom, casual as ever. "Hi, honey. Hope you had a nice, quiet Christmas. We missed you." Her words, so light and empty, made my fists clench with the kind of fury I hadn't felt in years. This was the moment everything would change. I just didn't know it yet. Growing up, I had always tried to be the good daughter. I helped my mom with chores, kept straight A's in school, and even sacrificed my dream of attending art school to study accounting because my parents said it was more practical. Meanwhile, Belle did whatever she wanted. When she dropped out of college to become a yoga instructor, my parents called her brave. When I worked overtime to help them pay off their mortgage, they barely acknowledged it. One particular incident should have opened my eyes sooner. 3 years ago, when my dad needed surgery, I took 3 weeks off work to care for him. I cooked, cleaned, drove him to appointments, and managed his medications. Belle showed up once and stayed for an hour, taking selfies with him for social media. Then she left, claiming she had a yoga retreat to attend. Yet somehow, when my parents talked about that time, they painted Belle as the supportive daughter while I was made out to be doing the bare minimum. My extended family wasn't much better. At every gathering, my aunts would praise Belle's free spirit while asking me when I was going to loosen up and learn to enjoy life. My accomplishments at work were dismissed as boring, while Belle's latest adventure teaching yoga in Bali was the talk of every family dinner. I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that family was family and they loved me in their own way. Even last month, I spent hours helping my mom prepare for Thanksgiving, only to hear her tell everyone that Belle had done all the work while I just sat around. I swallowed my hurt and kept quiet, just like always. When Belle announced she'd be hosting Christmas this year, I offered to help with the planning and cooking. She brushed me off, saying she wanted it to be perfect. I should have seen the signs then, but I was still trying so hard to believe in the fiction of our happy family. The truth is, I've spent my entire life trying to earn their approval, making excuses for their behavior, and pretending not to notice when they excluded me from spontaneous family gatherings that everyone else somehow knew about. I convinced myself that if I just tried harder, worked longer, gave more, they would finally see me as worthy of being part of their perfect family picture. "Hi, honey. Hope you had a nice, quiet Christmas. We missed you." My mother's fake cheerfulness made my stomach turn. I gripped my phone tighter, staring at the Instagram photos still open on my laptop, evidence of their perfect family gathering that I'd been deliberately excluded from. "Really?" I managed to keep my voice steady. "Because Mia's social media posts show everyone had a wonderful time at Belle's house. Everyone except me." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost see my mother's face, that familiar expression when she's been caught in a lie, but is already formulating excuses. "Oh, well," she stammered, "Belle organized it last minute, and you know how you can be at gatherings, always so quiet and making everyone uncomfortable. We just thought—" "Thought what?" I pressed. "That it would be better to lie to me, to make me spend Christmas alone while pretending everyone else was doing the same." "Don't be so dramatic," my mother sighed. "We were trying to avoid any awkwardness. You know how Belle wanted everything to be perfect." That's when it hit me. All the past canceled events, the times plans had mysteriously fallen through, the family photos I'd see later on social media, this wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern. "How many times?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "How many other gatherings have you lied to me about?" Another telling silence. Then, "Claire, you're being oversensitive. This is exactly why—" "Why what?" I cut her off. "Why you exclude me. Why you pretend I don't exist unless you need something. Why Belle gets to be the perfect daughter while I'm treated like an inconvenience." "That's not fair," my mother protested as we love you both equally. "It's just Belle puts in the effort to be part of the family. You're always so busy with work." I laughed bitterly. "Busy with work? You mean busy helping pay your mortgage? Busy taking care of Dad after his surgery? That kind of busy?" "Listen," my mother's voice turned stern. "If you're going to be like this, maybe it's better if we give each other some space. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable." The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone as 32 years of memories suddenly crystallized in sharp, painful focus. Every excuse, every dismissal, every misunderstanding, it had all been intentional. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. That was the moment everything shifted, the moment I finally saw the truth. I didn't have a family. I had people who shared my DNA, but treated me like an afterthought. After that phone call, something inside me snapped. I was done being the family doormat. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to everyone: my parents, sister, aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them. My fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, letting years of resentment spill out, raw and unfiltered. "I've seen the photos from Christmas dinner," I typed, my heart pounding. "The dinner I was told was canceled due to an imaginary ice storm. I want you all to know exactly what you've done. You didn't just exclude me from a family gathering. You coordinated an elaborate lie to make me spend Christmas alone." I attached screenshots of my mom's text messages. "Stay home, everyone's doing the same," next to the social media posts showing their celebration. Without a second thought, I hit send. The responses started almost immediately. Aunt Betty claimed they'd just forgotten to tell me about the change in plans. Uncle Robert suggested I was overreacting. My cousin Mia, whose post had exposed their lie, quickly deleted the photos and sent me a message accusing me of causing unnecessary drama. Then came Belle's response, long, condescending, and laced with judgment. She lectured me about how I never made an effort at family events and how she just wanted one perfect holiday. She even had the audacity to say excluding me was for my own good because I clearly didn't enjoy family gatherings. But it was my parents' reaction that truly opened my eyes. Instead of apologizing, they went on the attack. My mother started calling mutual family friends, spinning a story about how I was having some sort of breakdown. My father sent me a stern email about respecting family privacy and how airing our dirty laundry was unacceptable. "You've really done it now," Belle texted me. Mom's crying, everyone's upset, and it's all because you couldn't just accept that maybe you're the problem. This is exactly why we didn't want you at Christmas. I felt like I was in an alternate reality. They had deliberately excluded and lied to me, and somehow I was the villain for exposing their behavior. The more I stood my ground, the more they twisted the narrative. When I refused to apologize, they escalated. My mother began showing up at my workplace unannounced, causing scenes in the lobby. Belle posted vague updates on social media about toxic people and choosing peace over family. My father threatened to cut me out of his will if I didn't get in line. Instead of intimidating me, their actions only confirmed what I had finally realized. This wasn't a loving family protecting itself from a difficult member. This was a toxic system trying desperately to maintain control over someone who had finally stopped playing by their rules. I decided then that I needed to do more than expose their lies. I had to completely break free from their manipulation. Little did they know, I was already making a plan, one that would show them exactly what happens when you push away the one person who had always been there for them. A week after sending the confrontational email, I received an unexpected message from Ruth, an old family friend who had retired from managing my parents' finances years ago. "Claire, I've been seeing what's happening with your family on social media. There's something you need to know. Can we meet?" I agreed to meet her at a quiet cafe downtown. When I arrived, Ruth looked nervous, clutching a manila envelope. "I've been carrying the guilt of this for years," she said, sliding the envelope across the table. "Your father swore me to secrecy, but after seeing how they're treating you now, I can't stay quiet anymore." Inside the envelope were bank statements and legal documents dating back 15 years. As I read through them, my hands began to shake. According to these records, my grandfather had left a significant inheritance specifically for my education and future, nearly $300,000 money I had never known about. "Your father was the trustee," Ruth explained quietly. "He was supposed to give you access when you turned 25. Instead, he transferred everything to Belle's accounts, using it to fund her lifestyle and her failed business ventures." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All those years I'd worked overtime to pay for my accounting degree, the student loans I was still paying off, the times I'd helped them with their mortgage they had been sitting on my inheritance the whole time, spending it on Belle. "There's more," Ruth continued. "Your grandfather also left properties that were meant to be split equally between you and Belle. Your parents sold them all, using your power of attorney they had you sign when you were 18. Remember when they said it was for emergency medical decisions?" I felt sick. The document I'd trustingly signed had given them complete control over my financial interests. They had systematically robbed me of my inheritance while watching me struggle, accepting my help with their expenses, and making me feel guilty for not contributing enough to the family. Even worse, the statements showed regular transfers to Belle labeled as business investments. Money taken from my inheritance to fund her yoga studios, her retreats in Bali, all those adventures they'd praised her for while criticizing my boring accounting career. "Why tell me now?" I asked Ruth, my voice barely steady. "Because I saw your mother's social media posts painting you as unstable and ungrateful. They're trying to discredit you before you can discover the truth. They've been embezzling from you for years, Claire. What they've done isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal." Everything suddenly made horrible sense. Their escalating attempts to paint me as unreasonable, the threats to cut me out of the will when they'd already stolen my inheritance, their desperate need to maintain the narrative that Belle was the successful sister, while I was the difficult one. I carefully packed the documents back into the envelope, my mind racing. "Thank you, Ruth. I know exactly what I need to do now." This wasn't just about a ruined Christmas anymore. This was about years of calculated deception and theft, and I, an accountant with years of experience tracking financial fraud, was uniquely qualified to make them face the consequences. With Ruth's documents in hand, I spent the next week meticulously building my case. As an accountant, I knew exactly how to trace the money trail, every unauthorized transfer, every misused power of attorney, every fraudulent document. I tracked it all. I also hired Sarah Chen, a lawyer specializing in estate fraud, to review everything. "This is a clear case of financial exploitation," Sarah confirmed. "We can file criminal charges if you want to pursue that route." I considered my options carefully. A criminal case would destroy my family's reputation, but they had already destroyed our relationship. Still, I decided to give them one last chance to make things right. I emailed my parents and Belle, requesting a family meeting to resolve our differences. They jumped at the chance, probably thinking they could manipulate me back into line. We agreed to meet at my apartment the following Saturday. The morning of the meeting, I arranged 3 folders on my dining table, one for each of them. Inside each folder was a complete record of their fraud, along with a letter from my lawyer outlining their options. Either transfer all remaining funds back to me and sign a confession, or face criminal charges. They arrived looking smug, clearly expecting me to apologize. My mother started in immediately. "Claire, we're so glad you've come to your senses." I cut her off by sliding the folders across the table. "Before anyone says another word, I suggest you read these." The color drained from my father's face as he scanned the documents. Belle's hands started shaking. My mother tried to maintain control. "This is ridiculous! You're trying to blackmail your own family." "Blackmail?" I laughed coldly. "No, I'm giving you a choice. Return my inheritance with interest and admit what you did, or I'll let the police handle it. Ruth's already agreed to testify." "Ruth had no right," my father started. "You had no right," I interrupted. "You stole from me for years while watching me struggle. You used my power of attorney to sell property that was rightfully mine. You funded Belle's lifestyle with my inheritance." Belle burst into tears. "I didn't know. They told me the money was from their savings." "Don't lie," I replied calmly. "The transfers went directly to your accounts. You knew exactly what you were doing." My mother tried a different approach. "Think about what this will do to the family. What will people say?" "You should have thought about that before stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from your own daughter," I responded. "You have 48 hours to decide. Either sign the confession and arrange the transfers, or I'm going to the police." They left in a panic, my father nearly dragging my hysterical mother and sister out the door. Within hours, the family group chat exploded with messages from relatives, all lining up behind them, of course, but I remained calm. The truth and the evidence were on my side. "The ball's in their court now," I told Sarah over the phone that evening. "But something tells me they're not going to make the right choice." I was ready for whatever came next. After all, they had already given me the greatest gift: freedom from their manipulation. The 48-hour deadline passed without a word from them. As I expected, my family chose pride over honesty. They didn't sign the confession, didn't arrange any transfers. Instead, they scrambled to destroy evidence closing accounts, shredding documents, even attempting to pressure Ruth into retracting her statement. What they didn't know was that I had already submitted everything to the authorities. The morning after the deadline, I filed charges. By afternoon, the police were at their doors with search warrants. I watched it unfold from my office, my heart steady. My father was escorted out of his workplace in handcuffs. Belle's yoga studio was seized as an asset purchased with stolen funds. My mother's carefully constructed social media facade crumbled as she was arrested during one of her charity committee meetings. The family group chat exploded again, but this time the tone was different. Relatives who had dismissed my claims were suddenly silent as the evidence became public record. The local newspaper ran a headline: "The prominent families fall from grace." All the years they spent maintaining their perfect image ended in a single day. My phone buzzed with a text from Ruth. "You did the right thing. Your grandfather would be proud." She was right. This was no longer about revenge. It was about justice. As I watched my family's lies unravel, I felt no joy, only relief. The truth was finally out, and I was finally free. 1 year later, I sat in my new home in Denver, watching the snow gently fall outside my window. The court case had concluded months ago. My father and mother had both taken plea deals, agreeing to pay restitution. Belle's yoga empire was no more, and she had finally gotten a real job as a receptionist. The perfect family image they worked so hard to maintain was gone forever. Most of the relatives who had enabled their behavior for years stopped speaking to me, but surprisingly, I didn't miss them. Instead, I had built a new support system, genuine friends who valued honesty over appearances, colleagues who respected my work ethic, and even a few distant cousins who reached out to apologize for their past actions. Ruth came to visit me last week. Over coffee, she handed me an old photo album she'd found while cleaning out her office. Inside were pictures of my grandfather and me, moments I'd almost forgotten. In one photo, he was teaching me how to fish, both of us laughing at something long forgotten. "He always said you were the strong one," Ruth told me. "He knew they favored Belle, but he believed you would overcome it." I touched the photo gently, my fingers brushing against the faded edges. I remembered his kind smile. He had tried to protect my future with that inheritance, and though it had taken years, his final gift had given me something far more valuable than money. It gave me the courage to stand up for myself and the freedom to build a life on my own terms. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. What do you do when your entire life is built on lies and you've been played by the people who were supposed to love you the most? When the family you've always tried to please is the one that's been keeping you out in the cold? Claire spent years trying to earn her family's approval, sacrificing her dreams and bending over backward to fit into a mold that was never meant for her. She worked tirelessly, covered for their neglect, and convinced herself that the constant exclusion was just part of being the quiet sister. But when she found out the truth that they'd been lying to her about everything, including Christmas, everything changed. It wasn't just about the holidays anymore. It was about how her family had systematically excluded her, manipulated her, and used her for years. The moment Claire decided to stop accepting their lies and expose the truth, she freed herself from the chains they'd kept her in. She didn't just stand up for herself. She took back everything they'd stolen from her, her inheritance, her dignity, and her peace. Now Claire is free, living on her own terms and rebuilding her life without the toxic influences of her family. Her parents and sister? They chose pride over honesty, and it cost them everything. So, here's the question. Would you have stayed quiet, hoping things would change? Or would you have confronted the truth like Claire did, no matter the cost? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
I stared at the innocuous brown package on my kitchen counter, feeling a sinking sensation in my gut. Another one. The third this week, all containing random items I never ordered or wanted. A set of cheap steak knives, a floral silk scarf, and now a garish ceramic vase. My heartbeat quickened as I scanned the plain wrapping for any clues, but just like the others, there was no return address or identifying information. "What's going on?" I muttered under my breath, running a hand through my graying hair. A strange, gnawing feeling told me this was no mere mix-up at the mail depot. The sound of the doorbell jolted me from my thoughts. I peered through the peephole to see the familiar face of my niece, Cora, smiling back at me. A wave of relief washed over me as I ushered her inside. "Aunt Sage, you look spooked," Cora remarked, her brow furrowed with concern. "What's wrong?" Without hesitation, I recounted the bizarre series of mystery packages, laying out the contents on the kitchen island. Cora's eyes widened as she examined each item, her fingers tracing over the intricate patterns on the vase. "This is really weird," she murmured. "Have you tried calling the companies or tracking the shipments?" I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "That's the thing. There are no order numbers, no invoices, nothing. It's like these packages just materialized out of thin air." Cora's expression hardened, her jaw set in determination. "We need to get to the bottom of this. Maybe we should install some security cameras around the house, just in case." Her suggestion ignited a spark of unease within me. Could someone be targeting me? But who and why? Flashes of old family tensions flickered through my mind, but I quickly brushed them aside. Surely it couldn't be related to those ancient grudges. "You're right," I finally agreed, steeling my resolve. "Let's get those cameras set up. If someone is behind this, we'll catch them red-handed." As we worked together to mount the cameras, a sense of unease lingered. But deep down, I knew I had to unravel this mystery, no matter where it led. After all, I was Sage Allen, retired teacher, community leader, and no stranger to facing challenges head-on. Whatever storm was brewing, I would weather it with the same resilience that had carried me through life's ups and downs. Over the next few days, Cora and I meticulously installed the security cameras, positioning them to cover every potential entry point around my modest home. The uneasy knot in my stomach refused to dissipate, and Cora's presence provided little comfort as we pored over the footage, searching for any suspicious activity. That's when we saw him, a figure lurking in the shadows, his face partially obscured by the darkness. But there was no mistaking that familiar gait, the slight hunch of his shoulders that I'd recognize anywhere. "Frederick," I breathed, my fingers tightening around the computer mouse as if it were a lifeline. Cora's eyes widened. "You mean your cousin? The one who's been in and out of trouble ever since we were kids?" I nodded grimly, memories of Frederick's past misdeeds flooding back. Petty theft, fraud, even a stint in jail. He'd always been a black sheep in our family, constantly seeking shortcuts and exploiting loopholes for his own gain. But why now? I wondered aloud. What could he possibly want from me after all these years? Cora's brow furrowed as she zoomed in on the grainy footage, studying Frederick's furtive movements. "Well, whatever it is, it can't be good. We need to be careful, Aunt Sage." A shiver ran down my spine at the stern tone in her voice. Cora had always been level-headed, but there was a newfound severity in her demeanor that unsettled me. Over the next few days, the packages kept arriving, each more bizarre and unsettling than the last. A set of expensive crystal wine glasses, a designer handbag still wrapped in plastic, even a sleek laptop that must have cost a small fortune. With each delivery, my unease grew, and I found myself jumping at every creak and shadow. It was during one of our nightly stakeouts that Cora made a startling discovery. "Look at this," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she pulled up a news article from a neighboring town. There have been reports of similar incidents, people receiving random high-value packages they never ordered. My heart sank as I scanned the article, recognizing the all-too-familiar pattern. "You don't think?" Cora's expression was grim. "Frederick's name is all over this. It looks like he's been running some sort of twisted scam, sending people valuable goods, and then trying to extort money from them." Rage bubbled within me, hot and visceral. How dare he drag our family name through the mud once again with his selfish, criminal antics? But beneath the anger, a sliver of fear took root. If Frederick was truly behind this, what lengths would he go to in his pursuit of ill-gotten gains? "We need to stop him," I declared, my voice trembling with resolve. "Whatever it takes, we can't let him get away with this." Cora nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Don't worry, Aunt Sage. We'll bring that scumbag down, even if we have to catch him in the act ourselves." As we began plotting our next move, a sense of grim purpose settled over us. Frederick had crossed a line, and he would soon learn that messing with Sage Allen was a grave mistake, one he wouldn't soon forget. In the days that followed, Cora's online digging unveiled a troubling pattern. Frederick's name cropped up time and again, linked to similar schemes across multiple states. Packages filled with random, high-value items would arrive at unsuspecting victims' doorsteps, only for Frederick to surface later, demanding payment under the guise of settling bogus debts. The sheer audacity of his con left me reeling. How could he stoop so low? I muttered, pinching the bridge of my nose as the evidence mounted on Cora's laptop screen. I knew he was troubled, but this is a whole new level of depravity. Cora's expression hardened, her jaw set in a tight line. Clearly, he's spiraling out of control. We need to put a stop to this before someone really gets hurt. Her words struck a chord deep within me, dredging up memories I'd long tried to bury. Frederick's descent into petty crime and shady dealings had been a source of constant tension within our family, driving an irreparable wedge between his parents and the rest of us. I could still hear the echoes of heated arguments, accusations hurled back and forth like daggers. "He's just a kid, Sage. Boys will be boys," my aunt would plead, her eyes desperate for understanding. But my mother's gaze would remain steely, unwavering. "That kid is a menace. Mark my words, he'll bring nothing but trouble to this family." At the time, I had dismissed their words as mere hyperbole, the overblown ramblings of adults caught up in their own drama. But now, faced with the undeniable evidence of Frederick's misdeeds, I couldn't help but wonder if those long-buried enmities had finally taken root, blossoming into something far more sinister. "Why now, Frederick?" I found myself whispering, my fingers tracing the faded pages of an old family photo album. "What do you want from me after all these years?" Beside me, Cora's fingers flew across the keyboard, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I think I might have found our answer," she murmured, her voice laced with a mixture of disgust and triumph. On the screen, a news article flashed, a mugshot of Frederick, his expression defiant even as the headline blared details of his latest arrest. Fraud, embezzlement, racketeering. The charges were staggering, painting a portrait of a man drowning in a sea of debt and desperation. "He's broke," Cora surmised, her eyes meeting mine with grim understanding. "And you know what they say about people with nothing left to lose." A chill ran down my spine as the pieces fell into place. Frederick's sudden resurgence in our lives, the escalating packages, the brazen attempts at extortion, it all led back to one inescapable conclusion. He was targeting me, his own flesh and blood, in a last-ditch effort to claw his way out of the pit he'd dug for himself. As the realization washed over me, a wave of steely resolve rose within my chest. This was no longer just about packages or petty scams. This was a battle for the soul of our family, a reckoning long overdue. And Frederick was about to learn that karma had finally come calling, with a vengeance. The packages kept coming, each one more extravagant and valuable than the last. A gorgeous diamond tennis bracelet, a top-of-the-line laptop, even a sleek virtual reality gaming system, still sealed in its box. With every delivery, my sense of unease grew, morphing into a simmering rage that threatened to boil over. It was during one of our nightly vigils, poring over the security footage, that Cora's phone trilled with an incoming call. She shot me an apologetic glance before answering, her expression quickly shifting to one of concern. "Theo, what's going on?" she asked, her brow furrowing as the voice on the other end crackled through the speaker. Theo was an old family friend, a veteran cop who had always looked out for us. If he was calling at this hour, it couldn't be good news. Slow down," Cora urged, waving me over to listen in. "You're saying you found something on Frederick?" My heart lurched at the sound of his name, and I leaned in closer, straining to catch Theo's words through the tinny speaker. "Deep in debt, over his head with some real nasty characters," Theo's gruff voice echoed. "Looks like he might be trying to pull off some kind of scam, targeting someone close to him for a big score." Cora's eyes met mine, a silent understanding passing between us. Of course, it all made sense now. Frederick's desperate financial situation, his sudden reappearance in our lives, the escalating packages, it was all part of an elaborate scheme to bilk me out of every penny I had. "That low-life son of a," I muttered, my fists clenching involuntarily. The sheer audacity of his plan, the betrayal of targeting his own family, ignited a fury within me unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Cora placed a gentle hand on my arm, her touch grounding me in the moment. "Thanks for the heads up, Theo," she said into the phone, her voice steely with determination. "We'll handle it from here." As she ended the call, a weighted silence hung between us, thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Cora broke the stillness, her words slicing through the air like a knife. "We have to stop him, Aunt Sage, no matter what it takes." I nodded, my jaw set in a grim line. "Absolutely. That snake has gone too far this time." A plan began to take shape in my mind, a daring gambit that would force Frederick to show his true colors once and for all. But to pull it off, we'd need help. Someone with insider knowledge, someone Frederick would never suspect. "Call your cousin Blake," I instructed Cora, my voice leaving no room for argument. "It's time we brought the rest of the family into this." As Cora dialed the number, I felt a surge of grim satisfaction coursing through my veins. Frederick had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, in thinking he could slither his way back into our lives and bleed us dry without consequence. This time, there would be no more second chances, no more empty promises of reform. This time, justice would be served, and Frederick would finally answer for his litany of sins against our family. The annual Allen family reunion was always a boisterous affair, a chance for distant relatives to gather and catch up over heaping plates of Mom's famous potato salad. But this year the cheerful banter and laughter felt forced, a thin veil barely concealing the undercurrent of tension that crackled through the air. As I scanned the crowded backyard, my gaze landed on Frederick, holding court in the corner with a small cluster of cousins. His booming laugh grated against my nerves, and I felt my hands ball into fists at my sides. This couldn't go on any longer. Exchanging a meaningful glance with Cora, I steeled my resolve and began weaving through the throngs of people, making a beeline for Frederick's little coterie. As I drew closer, his eyes met mine, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of unease cross his features before his trademark smirk snapped back into place. Well, if it isn't my dear cousin Sage, he drawled, raising his beer in a mock toast. To what do we owe the pleasure? I felt the eyes of the others upon me, their gazes curious, expectant. This was it, the moment of truth. Cut the crap, Frederick, I spat, my voice low and dangerous. We know what you've been up to with those packages. A hush fell over the group as Frederick's smirk faltered, his bravado slipping for the briefest of moments. But just as quickly, he regained his composure, letting out a dismissive chuckle. Packages? What are you on about, Sage? You're starting to sound a bit paranoid in your old age. The jeers and snickers from his little entourage only fueled my anger, and I felt my pulse quicken as I stepped closer, invading his personal space. Don't play dumb with me, I snarled, jabbing a finger into his chest. We have evidence, video footage of you sneaking around my property, the paper trail linking you to similar scams across the country. It's all there, clear as day. Frederick's eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I saw a glimmer of panic flit across his features. But just as quickly, he schooled his expression into one of feigned indignation. These are serious accusations, Sage, he scoffed, puffing out his chest in a show of bravado. You'd better have some solid proof before slandering my good name like this. A tense silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. This was the moment, the chance to back down, to defuse the situation and walk away. But as I met Frederick's defiant glare, something inside me snapped. You're right, I growled, my voice dripping with venom. I do have proof, and I'm going to make sure the whole family sees it. With that, I whirled around and stormed away, leaving a stunned Frederick in my wake. As I marched back towards the house, Cora fell into step beside me, her expression a mix of concern and admiration. That was intense, she murmured, her eyes wide. Are you sure you want to do this, Aunt Sage? There's no going back after this. I didn't hesitate, my mind made up. Absolutely. It's time for Frederick to face the consequences of his actions once and for all. As we made our way inside, I could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes boring into my back. But I didn't care. This was about more than just packages or petty scams. This was about justice, about reclaiming our family's dignity from the clutches of a man who had squandered it for far too long. And as I dialed Theo's number, I knew that the reckoning had finally arrived. The next few days were a flurry of activity as Cora, Theo, and I put the final pieces of our plan into motion. We knew Frederick would be monitoring the situation closely, waiting for his next opportunity to strike. And that's precisely what we were counting on. Are you sure you want to go through with this, Sage? Theo asked, his brow furrowed with concern as he triple-checked the hidden cameras we'd planted around my property. This guy seems like bad news. I don't want you getting caught in the crossfire. I met his gaze, my jaw set in determination. I'm sure, Theo, it's time we put an end to Frederick's games once and for all. Cora stepped forward, her expression mirroring my own resolute demeanor. We've got your back, Aunt Sage. This scumbag isn't going to know what hit him. With a sharp nod, Theo signaled that everything was in place. All right then, let's get this show on the road. The bait was simple, another high-value package, this time containing a sleek, top-of-the-line drone with all the bells and whistles. We knew Frederick wouldn't be able to resist such a tempting prize, and sure enough, within hours of the delivery, the security feeds crackled to life. There he was, skulking around the periphery of my property, his eyes darting back and forth like a cornered animal. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched him inch closer, his movements furtive and calculated. He's going for it, Cora whispered, her fingers tightening around the edge of the laptop screen. We held our breath as Frederick crept up to the front porch, snatching the package with a greedy swiftness before retreating back into the shadows. But this time, he wasn't getting away so easily. That's our cue, Theo growled, his hand already reaching for his radio. Let's move in. In a blur of motion, We sprang into action, Theo's team of officers converging on my property from all sides. Frederick's eyes went wide as the net closed in around him, and for a moment I almost felt a twinge of pity at the sheer terror etched across his features. Almost. "Frederick Allen, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, and a whole host of other charges," Theo barked, his tone leaving no room for negotiation as he slapped the cuffs around Frederick's wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." But Frederick wasn't going down without a fight. As the officers hauled him towards the waiting squad car, he craned his neck in my direction, his eyes burning with a poisonous mixture of rage and desperation. "You think this is over, Sage?" he spat, his words laced with venom. "You have no idea what you've just stepped into. This is just the beginning." A shiver ran down my spine at the implicit threat in his voice, but I refused to show any outward sign of fear. Not now, not after everything we'd been through to get to this point. "Save it for the judge, Frederick," I countered, my voice steady and unwavering. "Your reign of terror is over." As the squad car peeled away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. The weight of Frederick's looming presence, the constant anxiety and uncertainty, had finally been lifted from my shoulders. But even as I basked in the momentary triumph, a nagging voice in the back of my mind reminded me that this was far from over. Frederick's parting words echoed like a sinister promise, a harbinger of storms yet to come. Cora must have sensed my unease because she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around me in a fierce embrace. "Don't worry, Aunt Sage," she murmured, her voice thick with conviction. "We've got this. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." And in that moment, surrounded by the unwavering support of my family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would emerge victorious. Because when it came to defending our loved ones, there was no force on earth that could stand in our way. The atmosphere at the Allen family reunion was electric, charged with a palpable tension that crackled through the air like static electricity. As I scanned the crowd gathered in my backyard, I could see the whispers, the furtive glances in my direction. Everyone was buzzing about the events of the past week. Frederick's dramatic arrest the topic on everyone's lips. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt at the prospect of airing our dirty laundry in such a public forum. But the other, larger part of me knew that this was a reckoning long overdue, a chance to finally expose Frederick's misdeeds and hold him accountable for the pain and chaos he'd sown within our family. Cora must have sensed my inner turmoil because she leaned in close, her voice low and reassuring. "You ready for this, Aunt Sage?" I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve, and gave her a curt nod. "More than ready. It's time we put an end to this once and for all." With that, I stepped forward, my movements commanding the attention of the assembled crowd. A hush fell over the gathering as all eyes turned towards me, a heady mixture of curiosity and apprehension hanging thick in the air. "Family," I began, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "I know you're all wondering why I've called this little impromptu get-together today. The truth is, there's something that needs to be addressed, a cancer that has been festering within our ranks for far too long." A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd, but I pressed on, undeterred. For years we've turned a blind eye to the actions of one person, a man who has shown time and again that he has no regard for the sanctity of our family or for the values we hold dear. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I'm talking, of course, about Frederick. At the mention of his name, a palpable shift occurred, as if a collective gasp had been sucked from the lungs of every person present. Frederick's supporters shifted uncomfortably, their gazes darting back and forth while others leaned forward, rapt with attention. "Some of you may have heard whispers about his recent activities," I continued, my voice hardening. "The packages, the scams, the outright extortion attempts. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's all true, and we have the evidence to prove it." With a sharp nod to Cora, she queued up the video footage we'd compiled, the large screen behind me flickering to life with grainy images of Frederick skulking around my property, his movements furtive and guilt-ridden. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as the damning footage played out, each frame more incriminating than the last. And then, the pièce de résistance, the video of Frederick's arrest, his snarling face contorted with rage as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. As the footage concluded, a heavy silence hung in the air, thick and oppressive. All eyes were on me, 1,000 unspoken questions burning in their gazes. Finally, a voice broke through the stillness, trembling with barely contained emotion. "Is it true?" Frederick's mother croaked, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Did you really do all those terrible things, son?" For a long moment, Frederick said nothing, his gaze fixed on the ground, his shoulders slumped in defeat. But then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded, a barely perceptible dip of his chin that spoke volumes. I didn't have a choice," he muttered, his voice tinged with a mixture of defiance and shame. "I was drowning, backed into a corner. Sage was the only one who could help me out of this mess." A chorus of gasps and outraged cries erupted from the crowd, but I remained stoic, letting the damning truth of his words hang in the air like a noxious cloud. As Frederick was led away, his footsteps echoing hollowly across the yard, I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me. The cancer had been excised, the festering wound finally lanced and drained. But even as I basked in the momentary triumph, I knew that our work was far from over. This was just the first step in a long journey, a journey to heal the rifts that had been torn open within our family, to rebuild the bonds of trust and kinship that Frederick had so callously shattered. And as I looked out over the sea of faces, their expressions a kaleidoscope of emotions ranging from shock to anger to grim determination, I knew that we would emerge from this trial stronger than ever before. Because at the end of the day, we were Allens. And no matter what storms raged around us, our family would weather them together, united and unbreakable. The weeks following Frederick's arrest were a whirlwind of activity. With his confession and the damning evidence we'd gathered, the case against him was airtight. He was slapped with a laundry list of charges: fraud, extortion, racketeering, you name it. As the full extent of his crimes came to light, the family was left reeling, struggling to come to terms with the depths of his betrayal. But through it all, I remained steadfast, channeling my energy into something positive, a mission to ensure that no one in our community would ever have to endure the kind of trauma and turmoil that Frederick had inflicted upon us. It started small, with a few neighborhood watch meetings and workshops on recognizing the signs of elder abuse and financial exploitation. But as word spread of our efforts, the momentum grew, drawing in more and more volunteers eager to lend their voices and their time to the cause. "You know, when all this went down, I was really worried about how it would impact the community," Theo admitted one evening as we strategized over cups of lukewarm coffee. "But look at what you've managed to build here, Sage. It's incredible." I shook my head, a wry smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "I'm just doing what needs to be done, my friend. After everything we went through with Frederick, I couldn't sit idly by and let others fall victim to the same kind of predatory behavior." Cora, ever my stalwart ally, chimed in with a proud grin. "My aunt, the unstoppable force for good. Who would have thought your retirement would lead to all this?" We shared a laugh at that, the warm camaraderie a balm for the lingering aches and pains of our recent ordeal. But even in those light-hearted moments, I never lost sight of the larger mission at hand. The real work began in earnest a few months later, when our grassroots efforts caught the attention of the local authorities. Before I knew it, I found myself sitting across the table from the district attorney herself, outlining our plans for a comprehensive community outreach and education program. "What you've accomplished so far is admirable, Miss Allen," the DA said, her eyes shining with a mixture of respect and determination. "But we can take this even further. With the right resources and support, we can implement preventative measures on a much larger scale, protecting vulnerable populations across the entire county." And just like that, our humble neighborhood watch evolved into something far grander, a full-fledged initiative with backing from law enforcement and local government agencies. Suddenly we had access to funding, publicity campaigns, and a platform to reach thousands upon thousands of residents. The days blurred together in a flurry of town hall meetings, educational seminars, and one-on-one consultations. I found myself crisscrossing the county, sharing our story and imparting the hard-won lessons we'd learned from our confrontation with Frederick's depravity. And through it all, I could feel the tides shifting, a groundswell of awareness and empowerment rippling through our communities. Elderly residents, who had once been easy targets for scammers and con artists, were now armed with the knowledge and resources to protect themselves. Families were having open and honest conversations about financial security and safeguarding their assets. It was during one of our packed community forums that the true impact of our efforts really hit home. As I scanned the sea of faces before me, I saw a tapestry of humanity. Young and old, from every walk of life, united in a common cause, and in that moment, I knew that we had achieved something truly special. This was no longer just about bringing Frederick to justice or settling old scores. This was about creating a lasting legacy, a bulwark against the kind of predatory behavior that had nearly torn our family apart. And as the thunderous applause washed over me, I felt a profound sense of pride and purpose swell within my chest, because in the end, that's what truly mattered. Not the trials and tribulations we'd endured, but the way we had risen above them, emerging stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. We were no longer victims, but warriors, armed with the knowledge and the determination to protect what mattered most, our loved ones, our community, our very way of life. And as I looked out over that crowd, I knew that our work was far from over. But with each life touched, each person empowered, we were building something truly special. A legacy that would endure long after the sting of Frederick's betrayal had faded from memory. A legacy of strength, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to justice and community. A legacy worthy of the Allen name. The crisp autumn air greeted me as I stepped out of my car, the familiar scent of freshly fallen leaves filling my lungs. Glancing up at the quaint two-story house where I had spent countless childhood summers, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. Little did I know that this unexpected return to my hometown would unravel a web of deceit that threatened to tear my family apart. "Lenore?" The gruff voice of my grandfather, Gregor, broke the silence. "What in God's name are you doing here?" I mustered a weak smile, trying to mask the turmoil bubbling within me. "It's a long story, Grandpa." His brow furrowed as he studied me intently, those piercing blue eyes seemingly peering into my soul. "Well, you'd better come inside and start talking." As we settled into the living room, the memories of simpler times flooded back, but my mind quickly snapped back to the present, the weight of my recent misfortunes pressing heavily upon me. My voice faltered, the words catching in my throat. "I lost everything, Grandpa." Gregor's expression hardened, his jaw clenching. "What do you mean? You lost everything?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the onslaught of questions. "My business partner in New York. He betrayed me, swindled me out every last penny I had." Gregor's eyes narrowed, his skepticism palpable. "And how exactly did this happen?" As the details spilled forth, each revelation more damning than the last, I could see the disbelief etched across my grandfather's face. The way he looked at me, it was as if he didn't recognize the person sitting before him. "So you're telling me that this snake conned you out of your life savings?" Gregor shook his head, his voice laced with disappointment. "I thought I raised you smarter than that, girl." His words stung like a slap to the face. But I couldn't blame him. The weight of my naivety crushed me, the shame burning hot in my cheeks. "I know, Grandpa. I know." My voice trembled, the tears threatening to spill over. But I swear, I had no idea he was capable of such deceit. Gregor's gaze softened ever so slightly, but the skepticism remained. "Well, you're here now. We'll figure this mess out, one way or another." As he rose from his chair, a heavy silence hung in the air, unspoken questions lingering like ghosts. Little did we know, this was merely the beginning of a much darker truth that would shake the very foundations of our family. The weight of Gregor's words hung heavy in the air as we sat in silence, the ticking of the grandfather clock echoing through the room like a metronome counting down the seconds until the next bombshell dropped. Little did I know, the revelations that followed would shatter what little remained of my trust in those closest to me. Gregor cleared his throat, his expression grave. "Lenore, there's something I need to tell you." I steeled myself, bracing for yet another harsh truth to come crashing down upon me. "You know about the inheritance your grandma left you, right?" he began. his voice low and somber. I nodded, my brow furrowing in confusion. Of course, you've always taken care of managing it for me. Gregor's jaw clenched and he averted his gaze as if struggling to find the right words. That's just it, kid. I haven't been managing it. Not for years now. My heart skipped a beat, a knot forming in the pit of my stomach. What are you saying, Grandpa? He sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping with the weight of whatever burden he carried. Your Uncle Hal, he's been handling the finances, and it seems he's been helping himself to more than his fair share. The floor seemed to drop out from beneath me as the weight of his words sank in. Uncle Hal, the man I had looked up to as a child, the one who had always seemed so generous and caring, had been stealing from me all along. How is that possible? I stammered, my hands trembling. Why would he do such a thing? Gregor shook his head, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment. I don't know, kid. I trusted him, too. Gave him full control over the accounts years ago when my health started failing. The sense of betrayal cut deep, like a knife twisting in my gut. Not only had I been swindled by a business partner, but now it seemed my own flesh and blood had been deceiving me as well. Do you have any idea how much is missing? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Gregor's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. Enough to make my blood boil, that's for damn sure. In that moment, a fire ignited within me, a burning desire for justice and retribution. Uncle Hal had not only stolen from me, but he had violated the sacred trust of family, and for that he would pay dearly. As Gregor laid out the evidence he had uncovered, the suspicious transactions, the lavish purchases, the blatant disregard for our financial well-being, a plan began to take shape in my mind. I would not rest until every last penny was accounted for, and Uncle Hal was held responsible for his despicable actions. With a steely determination etched across my face, I met Gregor's gaze. Don't worry, Grandpa. We're going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it takes. The sense of betrayal burned like acid, eating away at my insides, as Mom and I pored over the financial records Gregor had uncovered. With each damning transaction, each suspicious investment, the full extent of Uncle Hal's deceit became glaringly apparent. I can't believe this, Mom muttered, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. How could he do this to his own family? I shook my head, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Greed, Mom, pure and simple. The paper trail spoke volumes, painting a vivid picture of Uncle Hal's lavish lifestyle. The luxury cars, the extravagant vacations, the ostentatious home renovations, all funded by the very inheritance meant to secure our family's future. Look at these investment portfolios, I said, sliding a stack of documents across the table. He's been gambling our money away on high-risk ventures, chasing get-rich-quick schemes. Mom's eyes widened as she scanned the pages, her expression darkening with each line she read. This is reckless, irresponsible, unforgivable. A heavy silence fell between us, the weight of Uncle Hal's betrayal hanging thick in the air. We had trusted him implicitly, never suspecting that the very man tasked with safeguarding our legacy was systematically dismantling it from the inside. We have to stop him, I said, my voice low and resolute. We have to make him pay for what he's done. Mom's eyes met mine, a steely determination reflecting back at me. Absolutely, but we need ironclad proof, something he can't weasel his way out of. As we strategized late into the night, the path forward became clear. We would have to set a trap, lure Uncle Hal into a false sense of security, and catch him in the act. It was a risky gambit, but one we were willing to take to ensure justice was served. In the days that followed, we meticulously gathered evidence, documenting every transaction, every financial maneuver Uncle Hal had made. The stack of incriminating paperwork grew thicker with each passing hour, a damning testament to the depths of his greed and deceit. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. We arranged a family dinner under the guise of clearing the air, inviting Uncle Hal under the pretense of reconciliation. Little did he know, we had laid the perfect trap, one that would expose his misdeeds and leave him with nowhere to hide. As he strode through the door, a smarmy grin plastered across his face, I felt a surge of determination coursing through my veins. This was it, the moment we had been waiting for, the opportunity to finally confront the man who had betrayed us all. "Lenore, darling," Uncle Hal exclaimed, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "It's so good to see you." I forced a smile, steeling myself for the confrontation that was about to unfold. "Uncle Hal, we have a lot to discuss." The tension in the air was palpable as we gathered around the table, Uncle Hal's false bravado doing little to mask the unease that radiated from him. It was as if he could sense the trap closing in, but his arrogance blinded him to the truth. "So, what's this all about?" he asked, flashing that smarmy grin that had once charmed so many. "I thought we were here for a nice family dinner." I exchanged a glance with Mom, our resolve steeled by the mountain of evidence we had amassed. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the opportunity to finally confront the man who had betrayed us all. "We know what you've been doing, Hal," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "The embezzlement, the shady investments, the lavish spending, it all stops now." Uncle Hal's face contorted into a mask of feigned confusion, his eyes darting between us like a cornered animal seeking an escape. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lenore. This is preposterous." Mom slid a thick file across the table, the damning paperwork spilling out like a twisted confetti of deceit. "We have proof, Hal. Bank statements, investment portfolios, receipts, all documenting your every move." For a brief moment, Uncle Hal's composure faltered, his mask of indignation slipping ever so slightly. But he quickly regained his footing, his lips curling into a sneer of contempt. "So what? You think you can just accuse me and expect me to roll over?" He spat, his voice dripping with venom. "This is my family's money, and I'll do with it as I see fit." The sheer audacity of his words hit me like a physical blow, the depth of his selfishness and entitlement laying bare for all to see. In that moment, any lingering shred of familial loyalty evaporated, replaced by a burning desire for justice. "How dare you?" I fired back, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "That money was never yours to take. It was meant to secure our future, our legacy, and you've been systematically dismantling it for your own personal gain." Uncle Hal's face twisted into a sneer of contempt, his eyes narrowing into slits of pure hatred. "You ungrateful little brat," he snarled. "After everything I've done for this family, this is how you repay me?" The air seemed to crackle with tension as our voices escalated, the once civil dinner devolving into a bitter showdown of wills. Accusations flew back and forth, each one more scathing than the last, until finally, Uncle Hal's mask of control shattered completely. "You want to know the truth?" he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "I did it all for you, for this pathetic excuse of a family. Everything I've done was to keep us afloat, to maintain the lifestyle we deserve." The sheer audacity of his words left me reeling, the depths of his delusion and self-justification laying bare for all to see. In that moment, I knew there was no reasoning with him, no shred of remorse or redemption to be found. As the din of our confrontation echoed through the room, I caught sight of Gregor's ashen face, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and sorrow. It was then that I realized the true cost of Uncle Hal's betrayal. The rift it had torn through our once close-knit family, the trust that had been shattered beyond repair. But even in the midst of that turmoil, a single thought burned bright within me. Uncle Hal would pay for his actions, no matter what it took. The wheels of justice had been set in motion, and there would be no turning back. The fallout from our explosive confrontation with Uncle Hal was swift and severe. In the days that followed, word of his betrayal spread like wildfire through our small town, igniting a firestorm of gossip and judgment. Some rallied behind us, offering words of support and condemning Uncle Hal's actions. Others, however, remained steadfastly loyal to him, clinging to the facade of success he had so carefully cultivated over the years. How could he do this to his own family? Aunt Peggy lamented, her eyes brimming with tears. "After everything we've been through together." Uncle Hal's younger brother, Todd, was less forgiving. "That snake always had a talent for charming his way into people's wallets," he spat, his voice laced with contempt. "I just never thought he'd stoop so low as to steal from his own blood." As the divisions within our family deepened, the strain became palpable. Thanksgiving dinners were boycotted, Christmas gatherings canceled, the once unbreakable bonds of kinship fraying under the weight of Uncle Hal's deceit. Through it all, I remained resolute, steeling myself against the onslaught of whispers and sideways glances that seemed to follow me wherever I went. The sympathizers, the enablers, the holier-than-thou busybodies who couldn't resist sticking their noses where they didn't belong. Their judgments rolled off me like water off a duck's back. My focus was singular, ensuring Uncle Hal faced the consequences of his actions, no matter what it took. Mom, bless her, was my rock through it all. "Don't let them get to you, honey," she'd say, wrapping her arm around me in a reassuring embrace. "We're doing the right thing, and that's all that matters." Still, the strain of the whole ordeal began to take its toll. Sleepless nights plagued me, my mind racing with scenarios, contingency plans, and worst-case outcomes. I found myself jumping at every unexpected sound, my nerves frayed to their breaking point. Then, one crisp autumn morning, everything changed. The shrill ring of my phone cut through the silence like a knife, jolting me from a fitful slumber. Gregor's gruff voice crackled through the line, his tone laced with urgency. "Lenore, you need to get over here. Now." Without a moment's hesitation, I threw on whatever clothes were within reach and raced over to Gregor's house, my heart pounding in my chest. What I found there would forever alter the course of our quest for justice. Gregor ushered me inside, his face ashen and drawn. "It's Hal," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's gone too far this time." In the living room, a scene of utter chaos greeted me. Furniture lay overturned, picture frames shattered, and in the midst of it all, a chilling message scrawled across the wall in what appeared to be red paint. "You'll regret this, you ungrateful brats." A chill ran down my spine as I took in the words, their menacing implications hanging heavy in the air. Uncle Hal had crossed a line, and in that moment, I knew there would be no turning back. As I surveyed the wreckage, a steely resolve settled over me. Uncle Hal had made his move, and now it was our turn to strike back. The gloves were off, and the stakes had just been raised. This was no longer about recouping financial losses. It was about protecting our family, our dignity, and our very lives. Uncle Hal had declared war, and we would answer his challenge with everything we had. The chilling message scrawled across Gregor's wall was a stark reminder that Uncle Hal's depravity knew no bounds. But rather than cowering in fear, it only fueled my determination to bring him to justice, no matter the cost. As Mom and I huddled with Gregor, formulating our next move, a plan began to take shape, a bold, audacious gambit that would require precision timing and nerves of steel. "We need to catch him in the act," I said, my voice low and resolute. "Get him to incriminate himself in a way that can't be denied or twisted." Gregor nodded slowly, his brow furrowed in contemplation. "A sting operation of sorts?" "Exactly," I replied, the pieces falling into place. "We'll lure him in with the promise of a deal, make him think he's getting away with it all. But this time, we'll be the ones holding the cards." The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation, dotting every I and crossing every T to ensure our plan was airtight. We enlisted the help of a trusted private investigator, arranging for state-of-the-art recording equipment to be installed in Gregor's living room, the very scene of Uncle Hal's unhinged outburst. Finally, the stage was set. A carefully worded message was sent to Uncle Hal, inviting him over to discuss a resolution to our familial conflict. The bait was laid, and all we could do was wait with bated breath. The appointed hour arrived, and with it, the sound of Uncle Hal's car pulling into the driveway. My heart pounded in my chest as Mom and I took our positions, tucked away in the adjacent study with the investigator, monitoring the live audio feed. Uncle Hal sauntered in, his usual cocky swagger on full display. "All right, I'm here," he announced, casting a disdainful glance around the room. "What's this all about?" Gregor cleared his throat, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "Hal, we've been talking, and we think it's time to put all this ugliness behind us." A derisive snort escaped Uncle Hal's lips. "Is that so? And what, pray tell, did you have in mind?" "A settlement," Gregor replied, his words measured and deliberate. "A clean slate, if you will. You return what you've taken, and we can move forward as a family again." A tense silence hung in the air as Uncle Hal mulled over the offer, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Finally, he let out a low chuckle, shaking his head in disbelief. "You really think it's that simple, old man?" he sneered. "That I'd just hand over everything I've worked for, all because you and your ungrateful brats threw a little temper tantrum?" The venom in his words was palpable, his true colors shining through like a neon sign. This was the moment we had been waiting for. the opportunity to catch him in his own web of lies and deceit. "We have proof, Hal," Gregor pressed, his voice steady and unwavering. "Reams of evidence documenting your every move. It's over." Uncle Hal's face contorted into a mask of rage, his composure shattering like a fragile glass. "You stupid old fool," he snarled. "Did you really think you could outsmart me? I've been running circles around you for years." The confession poured forth in a torrent of vitriol, each word more damning than the last. Uncle Hal laid bare the intricate schemes he had woven, the lengths he had gone to fleece our family of our hard-earned legacy. And through it all, the recording captured every sordid detail, preserving his unraveling for posterity. As his tirade finally wound down, Uncle Hal's chest heaved with exertion, his eyes wild and unfocused. It was then that the realization seemed to dawn on him. The trap had been sprung, and he was well and truly caught. A sickly pallor crept across his features as Gregor fixed him with a steely glare. "It's all on tape, Hal," he said, his voice laced with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. Every last word. In that moment, the full weight of Uncle Hal's downfall seemed to crash down upon him, the consequences of his greed and hubris finally catching up to him in spectacular fashion. And as Mom and I emerged from our hiding place, united in our resolve, one thing became abundantly clear. The tides had turned, and justice was finally within our grasp. The incriminating evidence we had gathered, coupled with Uncle Hal's own damning confession, was a devastating blow. But the battle was far from over. We knew that in order to truly achieve justice, we would need to confront him head-on, lay bare his misdeeds for the entire family to witness. And so, with steely determination, we prepared for the ultimate showdown. Gregor, ever the master strategist, devised a plan to lure Uncle Hal to a seemingly innocuous family dinner under the guise of clearing the air. Little did the serpent know we had something far more explosive in store. The appointed evening arrived, and as the rest of our extended family filtered into Gregor's home, the air was thick with tension. Hushed whispers and sideways glances betrayed the undercurrent of suspicion and mistrust that had taken root in the wake of Uncle Hal's transgressions. And then, like a darkened cloud rolling in, he made his entrance, all bravado and false smiles, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. "Ah, there's my loving family," he crowed, spreading his arms wide in a mockery of affection. "I'm so glad we could all come together and put this ugliness behind us." I fought back the urge to spit in his face, my hands clenching into tight fists at my sides. The audacity of the man to waltz in as if he hadn't just been caught red-handed in his own web of lies and deceit. But I held my tongue, exchanging a knowing glance with Mom and Gregor. The time for talk was over. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the chance to expose Uncle Hal's true colors for all to see. As the meal progressed, the tension in the room grew thicker by the minute. Uncle Hal regaled us with story after story, each one more grandiose than the last, his false charm oozing from every pore. It was sickening to watch, this master manipulator at work, and yet the knowledge that his downfall was imminent made it all the more bearable. Finally, as the plates were cleared and the last drops of wine drained from our glasses, Gregor rose to his feet, his gaze fixed squarely on Uncle Hal. "Well, now that we're all here, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. Uncle Hal's bravado faltered for a brief moment, a flicker of unease passing across his features. But he quickly recovered, plastering on that smarmy grin that had once charmed so many. Of course," he replied, waving a dismissive hand. "Let's get it all out in the open, shall we?" Little did he know, we were about to blow his world wide open. With a single nod, Gregor signaled to me, and I reached into my bag, retrieving the damning audio recording that would seal Uncle Hal's fate. As the opening bars of his own voice filled the room, spewing forth a vile litany of confessions and admissions of guilt, a hush fell over the gathered family. Shock and disbelief etched itself onto their faces as the full extent of Uncle Hal's betrayal unfolded before them. And through it all, Uncle Hal remained frozen in place, his complexion growing paler with every passing second as the noose of justice tightened around his neck. When the final damning words had played out, a deafening silence hung in the air, broken only by the sound of Uncle Hal's ragged breathing. "Well, Hal?" Gregor's voice cut through the stillness like a knife. Anything to add? For once in his miserable life, Uncle Hal seemed well and truly speechless, his mask of control shattered beyond repair. As the weight of his crimes bore down upon him, his eyes darted around the room, desperately seeking an ally, a sympathetic face, but found none. The family that had once rallied behind him had finally seen the truth, and there was no turning back. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of vindication wash over me. The man who had so callously betrayed our trust, our loyalty, our very livelihood, was finally being held accountable. And as the shock and horror gave way to a chorus of condemnation from our gathered loved ones, one thing became abundantly clear. Uncle Hal's reign of deceit and manipulation had finally come to an end. Justice, at long last, had been served. In the aftermath of Uncle Hal's spectacular downfall, a strange calm settled over our family. The storm of anger and betrayal had finally passed, leaving in its wake a sense of resolution and a renewed determination to pick up the pieces and move forward. Of course, the legal ramifications were swift and severe. Uncle Hal found himself facing a litany of charges, from embezzlement and fraud to grand larceny. His once charmed life came crashing down around him, his ill-gotten gains seized and his reputation in tatters. As for the financial restitution, Uncle Hal was forced to liquidate every asset he had acquired through his deceitful schemes. Every last penny was meticulously accounted for and returned to its rightful place, the family's legacy, the inheritance he had so callously plundered. It was a bittersweet victory, to be sure. While the relief of having our hard-earned legacy restored was palpable, the pain of Uncle Hal's betrayal still cut deep. The trust that had once bound our family together had been shattered, and the road to healing would be a long and arduous one. But heal we did, slowly but surely. Gregor, ever the wise patriarch, took the first steps by relinquishing control of the family's finances to a team of professional advisors and trustees. No longer would the temptation of unchecked power lead someone down the path of greed and corruption. "I failed you all," he admitted, his voice heavy with remorse. "I let my pride blind me to the truth, and for that I am deeply sorry." It was a humbling moment, one that resonated deeply with all of us who had been caught in Uncle Hal's web of deception. We had all been guilty of blind trust, of believing that blood ties were thicker than the lure of easy money. But from that collective pain came a hard-won lesson, a renewed commitment to vigilance, to accountability, and to the unwavering pursuit of truth, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable. As for me, the entire ordeal had opened my eyes to a harsh reality, that even those closest to us are capable of unimaginable acts of selfishness and cruelty. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but one that ultimately steeled my resolve and sharpened my instincts. In the months that followed, I found myself drawn to the world of financial literacy and advocacy. I saw firsthand how a lack of education and transparency could pave the way for exploitation, and I was determined to do my part in shedding light on these issues. It started small, with workshops and seminars aimed at empowering individuals to take control of their financial futures. But as word spread of my own harrowing experience, the demand for my expertise grew. Before long, I found myself speaking at conferences and events across the country, sharing my story and imparting the hard-won lessons I had learned. It was a calling I had never expected, but one that filled me with a sense of purpose and redemption. And through it all, my family remained by my side, a united front forged in the crucible of Uncle Hal's betrayal. We had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. As I looked back on the tumultuous journey that had brought us to this point, one thing became abundantly clear. While the path to justice had been fraught with pain and heartbreak, the ultimate victory was worth every struggle. Uncle Hal's downfall had not only restored our financial legacy, but had ignited a fire within each of us, a burning desire to live with integrity, to hold ourselves and those around us accountable, and to never again allow the insidious forces of greed and deception to take root. It was a hard-won triumph, but one that would echo through the generations to come, a testament to the enduring power of truth, perseverance, and the unbreakable bonds of family. During a sun-drenched afternoon, the aroma of sizzling burgers filled the backyard as our family gathered for a casual barbecue. I watched as my brother Miles doted on his fiancée, Cora, serving her a plate of food with a besotted grin. Although beautiful and charming on the surface, something about Cora's calculating gaze unsettled me. "So, Lena," Cora said, her perfectly manicured fingers toying with the stem of her wine glass, "Miles mentioned you're a tutor at the community college." I tensed, sensing the subtle condescension in her tone. "Yes, I find it incredibly rewarding to help students unlock their full potential." Cora's scarlet lips curved into a patronizing smile. "How quaint. I can't imagine settling for such a modest career, but I suppose not everyone has ambition." My jaw clenched as Miles shot me an apologetic glance, oblivious to the true extent of Cora's disdain. I forced a polite smile, determined not to cause a scene at our family gathering. Later, as I helped Mom clear the dishes, she leaned in close. "Cora seems a bit intense, doesn't she?" I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. "I'm just worried Miles might be rushing into this. They've only been together for a few months." Mom's brow furrowed with concern. "You don't think she's after our family's money, do you?" Before I could respond, Miles strode into the kitchen, his arm draped possessively around Cora's waist. "There are my two favorite ladies. What are you whispering about?" Cora flashed her dazzling smile, but I noticed the calculation behind her eyes. "Oh, just girl talk." As the evening wound down, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Cora's true motives extended far beyond love and commitment. Her snide remarks hinted at a deep disdain for anyone or anything she deemed beneath her. And for some reason, I feared my brother had become her latest target. In the weeks following the barbecue, my unease around Cora only intensified. I noticed peculiar charges appearing on the family business accounts. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, even a deposit for a lavish destination wedding venue. When I questioned Miles about it, he brushed it off, insisting Cora was just getting settled into her new role managing our finances. "She's brilliant with numbers, Lena," he said dreamily. "I've never felt more confident leaving that side of things to someone else." I wanted to believe him, but something didn't add up. How could this near stranger have earned such blind trust so quickly? One evening, I stopped by Miles' apartment unannounced, hoping to catch Cora off guard. She opened the door, her perfectly coiffed hair and immaculate makeup striking for that late hour. "Lena, what a surprise," she purred, not bothering to hide her disdain. "Miles isn't home from the office yet. Actually, I wanted to talk to you." I pushed past her into the living room, unfazed by her narrowed eyes. "I've noticed some irregular expenses on the business accounts you're managing." Cora's expression remained infuriatingly calm. "Oh? Like what?" I listed off the suspicious charges: designer clothes, lavish vacations, even personal care services that seemed wildly excessive. "Care to explain what our family's hard-earned money is being spent on?" For a moment her mask slipped, revealing a flash of anger. But just as quickly, the placid smile returned. "Lena, darling, you worry too much. Can't a woman treat herself occasionally?" She trailed a finger along my arm, her voice taking on a sickly sweet tone. "Why don't you find yourself a nice man and leave the business matters to me?" I jerked away from her touch, repulsed. "I don't trust you, Cora, and I won't stop until I expose whatever game you're playing." Her smile turned frigid. "You'd be wise to mind your own business. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen to your beloved community college, now would you?" The thinly veiled threat hung in the air as I stormed out, more convinced than ever that Cora's intentions were sinister. If Miles refused to see the truth, I'd have to take matters into my own hands, for the sake of our family. After my confrontation with Cora, I knew I needed to dig deeper into her background. Miles was too blinded by love to see the truth, so it was up to me to expose her for who she really was before it was too late. I spent sleepless nights scouring the internet, searching for any clues about Cora's past relationships or financial dealings. What I uncovered was a trail of wealthy men she had dated briefly before unexpectedly cutting ties and moving on to her next target. Posing as a prospective client, I even contacted a few of Cora's former romantic interests. The stories they told painted a disturbing picture, one of manipulation, deceit, and a ruthless pursuit of money and status. "She love-bombed me at first," one man confided over the phone, his voice laced with bitterness. "Showered me with attention, made me feel like the luckiest guy in the world. but as soon as I signed over power of attorney, she drained my accounts and disappeared. Another disclosed how Cora had pressured him into an accelerated wedding timeline, only to call it off at the last minute and walk away with the non-refundable deposits. With each new revelation, my determination to stop Cora grew stronger. She was clearly a master of deception, and Miles was headed down the same tragic path as her previous victims if I didn't intervene. Meanwhile, Cora's schemes showed no signs of slowing down. She insisted on hosting an over-the-top engagement party, under the guise of celebrating their love, but likely as another opportunity to flaunt her illicit wealth. We simply must have it at the Grand Pavilion Ballroom. She gushed to Miles one evening when I stopped by unannounced. "It's the most exclusive venue in town." Miles beamed, utterly captivated. "Of course, my love, whatever you desire." She caught my skeptical gaze and smirked. "Lena, you're welcome to come as well, if you can find something suitable to wear from the community college's bargain bin." I bit back the urge to slap that smug grin off her face, reminding myself that confrontation would only cause Miles to further retreat into her web of lies. As I left, Cora's parting words cut like a knife. "I'd watch your back if I were you. You never know when something might slip through the cracks." Her vague threats only strengthened my resolve. If Cora thought she could bully me into submission, she was sorely mistaken. This was war, and I wouldn't rest until I reclaimed my brother from her toxic clutches. As the days ticked down to the engagement party, Cora's manipulation tactics intensified. She paid a visit to my parents, batting her long lashes as she spun an elaborate tale about investing in a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity that required a hefty cash infusion. "It would secure all of our futures," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity, "but we'll need your financial support to make it happen." My heart sank as I watched my normally sharp-witted parents get ensnared in Cora's deceitful web. Dad nodded enthusiastically, smitten by her charm offensive, while Mom wrung her hands with concern. "I'm not sure we have that kind of money readily available," she fretted. Cora's smile remained plastered on, but her eyes flashed with impatience. "Surely you could liquidate some assets or take out a loan against the family business? Miles and I would pay you back tenfold once this deal goes through." Before they could respond, I burst into the living room, unable to stay silent any longer. "Don't do it. She's lying to you, to all of us." Cora whirled toward me, her expression contorting into a venomous glare. "How dare you barge in here and make such accusations?" "Because it's the truth." I shot back, my voice rising with pent-up frustration. "I know all about your history of scamming wealthy men, Cora. You're nothing but a con artist." For the first time, real panic flickered across her features as she struggled to regain her composure. "She's delusional," Cora sputtered, turning to my stunned parents. "Lena's just bitter and jealous that her own life lacks purpose or direction." My fists clenched at my sides as Mom gaped at us, utterly bewildered. Dad's expression hardened as he considered Cora's deceptively innocent demeanor. "Is this true, Lena?" he asked gruffly. "Because if you're making outlandish claims with no proof, that's a line I won't tolerate." I took a deep, steadying breath. "I have proof. Lots of it." Reaching into my bag, I pulled out the dossier I'd compiled. Bank statements, testimonies from Cora's former flames, even a nugget about a prior arrest for financial fraud that had been expunged. Cora paled as I slammed the stack of papers on the coffee table with a thud. Her green eyes, so adept at feigning warmth, now blazed with undisguised hatred. "You'll regret this," she hissed through gritted teeth. I leveled her with an icy glare. "No, Cora. You're the one who's going to regret ever messing with my family." With that vow lingering in the tense silence, I turned on my heel and stormed out, my mind already formulating a plan to put a stop to Cora's twisted games once and for all. In the aftermath of my confrontation with Cora, I wasted no time coordinating my next move. I knew her vindictive nature meant she would likely retaliate, so I had to strike first and decisively. I gathered a small group of trusted relatives, my Uncle Jack, Cousin Emma, and Miles's childhood best friend, Alex. After swearing them to secrecy, I laid out the incriminating evidence I'd compiled on Cora. "This woman is out to bleed our family dry," I declared, sliding copies of the dossier across the table. "We need to expose her lies at the engagement party before she has a chance to make her next play." Uncle Jack stroked his graying beard, eyes narrowed in contemplation. I always had a bad feeling about that one. Count me in. Emma and Alex exchanged a loaded glance before nodding in solemn agreement. With my covert team assembled, we began mapping out an airtight plan of attack. Meanwhile, Cora continued flaunting her false persona, leveraging Miles's family connections to further her own agenda. I cringed as she sidled up to unsuspecting relatives at a lunch gathering, batting her lashes and spinning grandiose tales about her supposed business ventures. We're diversifying into high-end real estate development, she gushed, clinging to Miles' arm with an adoring smile. It's such an exciting opportunity, Miles beamed, utterly enthralled, as the others offered congratulations and well wishes. Only my dad regarded Cora with a measure of skepticism after my damning revelations. As the party drew nearer, tensions mounted. Cora caught me leaving the house one afternoon, her eyes glittering with unveiled malice. I know what you're up to, she hissed, strutting toward me with fists clenched. You and your pathetic little crew can try to take me down, but I'll bury you all. I refused to flinch, squaring my shoulders as I met her venomous glare. I'm not afraid of you, Cora. It's over. A cruel smile curved her painted lips. We'll see about that. The night before the party, my phone pinged with an ominous text from an unknown number. Give it up, or you'll lose everything. Attached was a photo of the community college where I taught, the implication clear. I shuddered, but my resolve didn't waver. Cora had upped the stakes, but she had no idea what I was capable of to protect my family. Tomorrow would be her ultimate reckoning. The Grand Pavilion ballroom glistened with opulence, the crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the lavish floral arrangements and white linen tables. But beneath the glamorous facade, an undercurrent of tension rippled through the air. Cora swept into the venue on Miles's arm, resplendent in a slinky emerald gown that left little to the imagination. Her smug smile faltered infinitesimally when she spotted our covert team stationed at strategic points around the room. Tonight will be a night to remember, she purred into Miles's ear, tightening her grip on his bicep. Just wait until you hear the announcement I have planned. As guests mingled and fawned over the extravagant affair, I caught Emma's eye and gave an imperceptible nod. It was time to spring our trap. The first subtle strike came as Uncle Jack engaged Cora in conversation, steering her toward a quiet corner with a few polite compliments. Your dress is exquisite, he remarked, his grandfatherly demeanor utterly disarming. It must have cost a small fortune, just like this entire party, I'd wager. Cora preened under the faux praise. Why, thank you, Jack. Miles and I spare no expense when it comes to the finer things. Of course, of course. Although I must admit, I was surprised when Lena told me about your unconventional business dealings. He tsked softly, watching her face contort with the first flicker of unease. Fraud, extortion, swindling wealthy bachelors out of their fortunes. It's all a bit unsavory, wouldn't you agree? Cora's mouth dropped open, but before she could respond, Emma sidled up with a conspiratorial grin. Oh, Aunt Cora, you simply must meet my friend Claire, she chirped, gesturing toward the sour-faced woman at her side. She's dying to share her experience dating you a few years back. As Claire launched into a diatribe about the thousands Cora had conned out of her, I watched the blood drain from cunning schemer's face. Nearby, Alex began questioning Miles about the astronomical party costs, while casually mentioning his concerns over Cora's misuse of funds. Within minutes, a hush fell over the ballroom as Cora's panicked gaze flickered between the damning witnesses closing in from every angle. Miles, honey, you have to believe me, she began, her voice wavering. But it was my turn to strike the final blow. I stepped forward, folders of irrefutable proof clutched in my hands. Everyone, I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake, I announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. This party is a sham, a ruse intended to distract us all from the truth about Cora's despicable intentions. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Cora paled, frozen in the spotlight of scrutiny. I have evidence, I declared, fanning out the incriminating documents with a flourish. Bank statements, legal records, testimonials, all laying out Cora's long history of defrauding and manipulating people for her own nefarious gain. Our relatives rallied behind me, bolstering my words with a chorus of condemnation aimed at the now exposed charlatan. Cora's mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish, her facade of confidence utterly shattered. In that moment, it was evident that her reign of terror had finally, deservedly, come to an ignominious end. As the weight of the evidence crushed down on her, Cora's composure rapidly unraveled. Her perfectly coiffed demeanor disintegrated into a frantic, wide-eyed panic. "Miles, darling, you can't possibly believe these ridiculous lies," she cried, grasping his arm with claw-like desperation. "It's all a big misunderstanding." But the hurt and betrayal etched on Miles's face spoke volumes. Slowly, reluctantly, the veil of infatuation lifted, as he absorbed the damning testimonies and paper trail detailing Cora's web of deceit. "How could you?" he rasped, anguish lacing his words as he wrenched free of her grip. "You used me, my family, for your own selfish gain?" Cora opened her mouth, but no coherent defense emerged, only a strangled whimper as the stark reality crashed down upon her. She was finished, exposed for the callous con artist she truly was. As the stunned silence stretched on, Dad stepped forward, his expression grave. "I think it's time you left, Miss Jennings, and I'd advise against any further contact with my family." The use of her full name seemed to jolt Cora from her stupor. With a last desperate pivot, she swept a hand through her perfectly coiffed tresses and attempted a tremulous pout. "Please, I never meant for things to go this far," she simpered, sickly sweet. "I fell so deeply in love with Miles that I lost my way for a bit, but I'm willing to make amends, do anything to prove my devotion." Miles recoiled as if struck, his jaw tightening with righteous indignation. "Save it. I don't want to hear another word from you." His cold dismissal seemed to finally pierce Cora's delusional armor. Her attempts at manipulation collapsed entirely as bitter fury contorted her delicate features into an ugly sneer. "You'll regret this," she spat in my direction, green eyes blazing with visceral hatred. "All of you." But her vitriolic threats rang hollow against the wall of familial solidarity that had rallied against her depravity. We stood united, an impenetrable front that her malice could never breach. With a last contemptuous glare, Cora gathered the tattered shreds of her dignity and stormed out, the click of her designer heels fading into blessed silence. Gradually, the tension in the room dissipated as the truth of Cora's treachery sank in. Miles remained still as a statue, absorbing the emotional fallout, until Mom enveloped him in a comforting embrace. "It's going to be all right, sweetie," she murmured, stroking his hair with maternal tenderness. "We're here for you." Tears glistened in his eyes as he clung to her, finally allowing the anguish to flood forth. But even in his heartbreak, a glimmer of hope shone through. The knowledge that he had us, his stalwart family, to help guide him through the wreckage. As I watched my brother's agonizing journey towards healing begin, I felt a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was over, and justice had prevailed through the strength of our unbreakable bonds. 6 months later, the dark cloud of Cora's duplicity had fully lifted from our family. The business was thriving once again under Miles and my joint leadership, and the strained bonds that her twisted schemes had frayed were healing steadily. I smiled as I watched Miles pore over financial reports at his desk, a crease of concentration furrowing his brow. Gone was the love-struck naivete that had blinded him to Cora's true nature. In its place was a wiser, more grounded man who had learned the value of vigilance the hard way. "Lena, can you come take a look at these projections for next quarter?" he called out, glancing up with a warm smile. "I want to make sure I'm not missing anything." As I rounded the desk to stand at his side, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at how far he'd come. In the aftermath of Cora's exposure, Miles had thrown himself wholeheartedly into restoring the family business, determined to atone for the mistakes and vulnerabilities that had nearly spelled our ruin. "Everything looks solid to me," I assured him, scanning the spreadsheet with a practiced eye. "Though I think we could afford to be a bit more aggressive with the marketing budget for that new product line." Miles nodded thoughtfully, jotting down a note. "You're probably right. I trust your instincts." The easy camaraderie and mutual respect between us was a far cry from the strained tensions of months past. Cora's deception had shaken Miles to his core, but rather than retreat inward, he had emerged more committed than ever to upholding the values of honesty and integrity that were the bedrock of our family legacy. Over dinner that evening, conversation flowed as freely as the wine, our raucous laughter filling the air in a way it hadn't for far too long. "Remember when Cora tried to pass off that ratty old fur as a vintage Revlon?" Emma cackled, nearly spilling her drink as she dissolved into a fresh gale of mirth. An impish grin tugged at Miles' lips as he shook his head ruefully. God, I can't believe how thoroughly she had me fooled. I'm just grateful you all saw through her act before it was too late. Mom reached across the table to give his hand a tender squeeze. What matters is that you opened your eyes in the end, honey. We're just glad to have you back. As the night wound down and our boisterous clan gradually dispersed, I found myself alone on the back patio, gazing up at the twinkling canopy of stars. So much had changed, and yet in many ways we had emerged stronger, a family united by the indestructible bonds of loyalty and truth. In that tranquil moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and resolution wash over me. We had weathered Cora's storm of malice and emerged battle-tested but whole. And though the scars might never fully fade, our perseverance and love for one another would forever be the blazing beacon to guide us through any darkness that dared encroach on our lives again. During a seemingly innocuous family dinner, the conversation flowed as usual, my husband Todd discussing his work at the insurance firm, our teenage son Aaron rambling about his latest video game obsession. That's when I noticed Todd's demeanor shift, his eyes darting furtively as he excused himself from the table, whispering into his phone in the hallway. "Sarah, I promise, we'll start fresh soon. Just be patient a little longer." My heart pounded in my chest as the weight of his words sank in. "Sarah?" A chill ran down my spine as Todd returned, his expression carefully composed, as if nothing had transpired. Doubts resurfaced. The late nights at the office, the unexplained charges on our credit cards. I had suppressed them, convincing myself that his dedication to providing for our family was paramount. That night, as Todd slept soundly beside me, my mind raced, dissecting every interaction, every half-truth that had once seemed innocuous. How could the man I had sacrificed so much for, the one for whom I had put my own career aspirations on hold, betray me in this way? The following morning, I feigned normalcy, my accountant's mind already formulating a plan. If Todd thought he could deceive me, the woman who had meticulously managed our finances for decades, he was sorely mistaken. I would unravel this web of lies, one thread at a time. Poring over our banking statements, I noticed suspicious patterns. Lavish purchases, withdrawals, and transfers that defied explanation. Each discrepancy fueled my determination, hardening my resolve to expose the truth, no matter how painful. As the days passed, my investigation intensified. I scoured credit card statements, cross-referenced receipts, and flagged every anomaly. The evidence mounted, and with it, my sense of betrayal deepened. One evening, while Todd was supposedly working late, I followed a lead to an upscale apartment complex. There, in the dimly lit parking lot, I caught a glimpse of him embracing a younger woman, their bodies intertwined in a passionate kiss. My heart shattered as the realization hit me. My husband, the man I had devoted my life to, had been living a lie. The evidence of Todd's betrayal lay scattered across my office desk. Bank statements, credit card receipts, all pointing to a hidden life he had so carefully concealed. As an accountant, I prided myself on my meticulous attention to detail, but even I had been blind to the glaring discrepancies in our finances. "What's all this?" Todd's voice startled me as he entered the room, his brow furrowed in confusion. I straightened my back, marshalling every ounce of courage. "Care to explain these charges at the Grand Lux Hotel, or the monthly payments to an apartment downtown?" Todd's face paled as he glanced at the incriminating paperwork. "Marlene, it's not what you think. Don't insult my intelligence," I spat, fury coursing through my veins. "I know about Sarah. I saw you with her." A heavy silence hung in the air as Todd struggled to formulate a response. Finally, he exhaled deeply, his shoulders sagging in resignation. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." "It just happened?" I echoed incredulously. "You've been living a double life, betraying me and our family with your lies and infidelity." Todd's eyes pleaded with me, but I had no sympathy left to offer. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But we can work through this, I swear." I let out a bitter laugh. "Work through this? After you squandered our hard-earned savings on your mistress, lavished her with gifts while I scrimped and saved to make ends meet? Rage contorted his features as he lashed out. You think it was easy, living with a woman so consumed by her work, always crunching numbers, never having time for me? His words stung, but I refused to let him shift the blame. That's no excuse for what you've done. I sacrificed my own ambitions to support your career, and this is how you repay me? Todd's head dropped, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I'm sorry, Marlene, I've made a mess of everything. Sorry doesn't cut it, I said coldly, gathering the damning evidence. Not anymore. As I brushed past him, our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw the depth of his regret. But it was too little, too late. The man I had loved, the one I had trusted implicitly, was nothing more than a stranger cloaked in deceit. I knew then that there was no turning back. The scales had fallen from my eyes, and I would stop at nothing to regain what was rightfully mine: my dignity, my independence, and my future. In the days following my confrontation with Todd, a heavy pall hung over our once happy home. The warmth and laughter that had once filled its walls were now replaced by a suffocating silence, punctuated only by the occasional heated exchange. I want a divorce, I stated flatly one evening, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve. Todd's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't be serious, Marlene, after everything we've been through? You did this? I shot back, gesturing to the emptiness that now surrounded us. Your lies, your betrayal, they destroyed our marriage. He shook his head vehemently. We can work it out. I'll do anything. Just don't throw away our family like this. But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The damage had been done, and the trust that had once bound us together lay in tatters. I knew, deep down, that there was no salvaging what remained of our broken union. Steeling my nerves, I contacted a divorce lawyer, a formidable woman named Rachel, who promised to fight for my fair share. As we pored over the financial records, a clearer picture of Todd's deception emerged. Lavish gifts, exotic vacations, all funded by our hard-earned savings. He treated her like a queen while I struggled to make ends meet, I confided in Rachel, my voice thick with emotion. Her eyes narrowed with determination. We'll make sure he pays for every penny, Marlene. This is just the beginning. True to her word, Rachel guided me through the labyrinth of legal proceedings, ensuring that every asset, every hidden account was laid bare. With each revelation, I felt a twisted sense of vindication, knowing that Todd's carefully constructed facade was crumbling around him. Yet, even as the evidence mounted, a part of me still clung to the memories of the man I had once loved. The charming, devoted husband who had promised to cherish me forever. How could someone I had trusted so implicitly have become such a stranger? In my darkest moments, I found solace in the company of my closest friend, Jenna. Over countless cups of coffee, she listened patiently as I poured out my pain, my anger, and my doubts. You're doing the right thing, Marlene, she would reassure me, her warm embrace offering a brief respite from the storm that raged within. He doesn't deserve your loyalty after what he's done. Her words, though harsh, rang true. Todd had shattered the sacred vows that had once bound us, and there was no turning back. As the divorce proceedings gained momentum, I could feel the weight of his betrayal slowly lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. I would emerge from this ordeal stronger, wiser, and above all, unbroken. The road ahead might be long and uncertain, but I knew that with each step I was reclaiming the life that had once been so callously stolen from me. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of Todd's betrayal seemed to bear down on me more heavily with each passing moment. Despite the support of my dear friend Jenna, I found myself drowning in a sea of doubt and anger, struggling to make sense of the life I had once known. It was during one of our coffee dates that Jenna broached a subject I had been too afraid to confront. "Have you considered hiring a private investigator?" she asked gently, her eyes filled with concern. I recoiled at the suggestion, my mind immediately conjuring up images of seedy detectives and sordid affairs laid bare. "I'm not sure I want to know any more than I already do." Jenna reached across the table, her warm hand enveloping mine. "Marlene, you deserve the truth, all of it. Isn't it better to have the facts than to be haunted by uncertainty?" Her words struck a chord, and I knew she was right. As painful as it might be, I needed to uncover the full extent of Todd's betrayal to finally shed light on the secrets he had kept hidden for so long. With Jenna's help, I tracked down a reputable private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Samantha, who promised to handle my case with discretion and professionalism. "Just tell me what you need, and I'll get to the bottom of it," she assured me during our initial consultation. I steeled myself, listing off the details I had uncovered: the mysterious apartment, the unexplained charges, and the elusive woman named Sarah. Samantha nodded, her keen eyes taking in every detail. "Leave it to me," she said with a confident nod. True to her word, within a matter of days, Samantha had unearthed a trove of damning evidence. Surveillance photos captured Todd's clandestine meetings with a woman identified as Clarice, a younger, stunning brunette who appeared to be his mistress. "He's been lavishing her with gifts, jewelry, designer clothes, all paid for with your money," Samantha reported grimly, sliding a stack of incriminating receipts across the table. As I pored over the evidence, my hands trembled with a potent mix of rage and heartbreak. This Clarice was no mere fling. Todd had been leading an entire double life, one funded by the very savings I had worked so tirelessly to build. "That bastard," I spat, hot tears of anger stinging my eyes. "He's going to pay for every single lie." Samantha's expression hardened with determination. "We'll make sure of it. This is just the beginning." With the truth laid bare before me, I felt a newfound sense of resolve coursing through my veins. No longer would I be the naive, trusting wife, blindly following the path laid out for me. This time, I would be the one calling the shots, and Todd would soon learn the true cost of his deceit. Armed with the damning evidence gathered by Samantha, I felt a newfound determination coursing through my veins. It was time to confront Todd and his mistress head-on, to strip away the veil of lies that had shrouded our lives for far too long. With Jenna by my side for moral support, we made our way to the upscale apartment complex where Clarice resided. My heart pounded with a mixture of anger and trepidation as we approached the sleek glass doors, the weight of what I was about to do bearing down on me. "Are you sure about this, Marlene?" Jenna asked, her voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath, steadying my resolve. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. No more running, no more hiding. Jenna gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, and together we stepped inside. The ride up to Clarice's floor was agonizingly slow, each passing second fueling the fire burning within me. When the elevator doors finally opened, I strode down the plush hallway with purpose, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to the inevitable confrontation. I rapped sharply on the door, my knuckles stinging from the force of my blows. Moments later, it swung open, revealing a startled Clarice clad in a silk robe, her perfectly coiffed hair mussed from what was undoubtedly a passionate tryst with my husband. "Marlene?" she gasped, her eyes widening in shock. "What are you doing here?" Before I could respond, Todd appeared behind her, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Marlene, this isn't what it looks like." "Save it," I spat, shoving past Clarice and into the lavish apartment. "I know everything, the lies, the affairs, the money you've been funneling to support your little mistress here." Clarice's mouth fell open in outrage. "How dare you barge in here and make accusations? Todd loves me and we're going to be together." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Is that what he told you? That he'd leave his wife and family for a pretty little thing like you?" Todd stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Marlene, please, let's discuss this like adults." "Oh, we're well past discussion," I snarled, reaching into my purse and retrieving the stack of evidence Samantha had provided. "I have proof of every sordid detail. The secret apartment, the lavish gifts, all paid for with money that should have gone to supporting our family." As I brandished the damning photos and receipts, Todd's face drained of color. Clarice, too, appeared shaken, her confident facade crumbling as the truth laid bare. "You've been using me," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Todd's gaze darted between us, his eyes pleading for understanding. "It's not like that, Clarice. I never meant to hurt either of you." But his words fell on deaf ears. The betrayal ran too deep, the wounds too raw to be soothed by empty platitudes. Save your lies for someone who still believes them, I spat, turning on my heel and storming towards the door. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. As I swept out of the apartment, Jenna hurrying to keep pace beside me, I felt a strange sense of liberation wash over me. The shackles of deceit had been broken, and for the first time in months I could breathe freely. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but I was ready to face it head-on. Todd's misdeeds had been laid bare, and now it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. No more hiding, no more lies. The reckoning had begun. In the aftermath of my explosive confrontation with Todd and Clarice, a sense of grim determination settled over me. I had laid bare the truth of his deceit, and now it was time to make him pay. Not just for the lies, but for every penny he had squandered on his sordid affairs. With Rachel, my formidable divorce lawyer, by my side, we set about meticulously documenting every financial betrayal, every hidden transaction that had drained our accounts over the years. The evidence was damning, a paper trail of excess and greed that left no room for doubt. As we prepared to file the divorce papers, Rachel turned to me, her steely gaze unwavering. We're not just going after a settlement here, Marlene. We're going to bury him. Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I knew she was right. Todd's actions had gone far beyond the bounds of a simple infidelity. He had systematically looted our hard-earned savings, betraying the very foundation of trust upon which our marriage had been built. When the news of our impending divorce hit the headlines, the fallout was swift and merciless. Todd's once pristine reputation as a respected insurance agent lay in tatters, his clients fleeing in droves as the sordid details of his affairs came to light. How could we have trusted him with our policies when he couldn't even keep his own house in order? One former client lamented to the press. As Todd's professional life crumbled around him, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching him reap the consequences of his actions. No more hiding behind a facade of respectability. The world now knew him for the liar and cheat he truly was. But my revenge didn't stop there. With Rachel's guidance, I dug deeper into Todd's financial dealings, uncovering a tangled web of shady investments and ethical breaches that threatened to strip him of his insurance license altogether. He's been playing fast and loose with client funds for years, Rachel revealed, her expression grim, using their premiums to fund his lavish lifestyle and pay off his mistresses. The evidence was irrefutable, and before long, the governing board had no choice but to revoke Todd's license, effectively ending his career in disgrace. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, each court appearance became a public spectacle, with Todd's sordid misdeeds laid bare for all to see. I watched with a strange sense of detachment as he squirmed under the weight of his own lies, his once cocky demeanor replaced by a pathetic whimpering as he begged for leniency. But I was unmoved. He had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it, alone, disgraced, and utterly ruined. In the end, the settlement was a mere formality. I had already taken back what was most precious, my dignity, my independence, and the knowledge that I had emerged from this ordeal a stronger, more resilient woman. As I watched Todd slink away from the courthouse, his head bowed in shame, I felt a strange sense of pity for the broken man he had become. But that pity was quickly overshadowed by a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was finally over, and I was free to start anew, unburdened by the weight of his betrayal. As the dust settled from the explosive divorce proceedings, I could scarcely recognize the man who had once been my husband. Todd's world had come crashing down around him, and the once cocky insurance agent was now a mere shadow of his former self. "This isn't over, Marlene," he snarled during one of our final court appearances, his eyes burning with a mixture of rage and desperation. "You haven't seen the last of me." But his threats rang hollow, a feeble attempt to cling to the illusion of power he had once wielded. The truth was laid bare. He was a disgraced shell of a man, his reputation in tatters, his finances in ruin. With each passing day, new revelations emerged, painting a picture of a man consumed by greed and deceit. It seemed that Clarice had been merely the tip of the iceberg, with evidence surfacing of multiple affairs spanning years, each mistress lavished with expensive gifts and exotic vacations funded by our hard-earned savings. He treated them like queens while I scraped by, pinching every penny, I confided to Jenna over coffee. my hands trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Jenna's expression hardened, her usual warmth replaced by a steely resolve. "He's going to pay for every single lie, Marlene. We'll make sure of it." True to her word, Jenna became my fiercest ally, standing by my side as we methodically dismantled every aspect of Todd's carefully constructed facade. With the help of Rachel and her team of investigators, we uncovered a tangled web of financial misdeeds that went far beyond simple infidelity. It seemed that Todd had been using client funds to bankroll his lavish lifestyle, siphoning off premiums and investment returns to fuel his insatiable appetite for excess. The evidence was damning, and before long, the governing bodies had no choice but to take action. "Mr. Wilkins, in light of the overwhelming evidence of ethical breaches and financial misconduct, we have no choice but to revoke your insurance license, effective immediately," the stern-faced judge declared, her gavel punctuating the finality of her words. As Todd slumped in his seat, his face ashen, I felt a strange sense of vindication wash over me. This was the true cost of his betrayal. Not just the loss of his marriage and family, but the complete and utter annihilation of everything he had worked for. In the weeks that followed, word of Todd's downfall spread like wildfire, his once respectable name becoming a byword for duplicity and greed. Former clients and colleagues turned their backs on him, their expressions a mix of disgust and pity for the man who had so thoroughly disgraced himself. I always knew there was something off about him. One former colleague remarked to the press, shaking his head in disbelief, but I never imagined the depths of his depravity. Through it all, Todd maintained a stoic silence, his once boisterous personality replaced by a sullen, withdrawn demeanor. It was as if the weight of his misdeeds had finally crushed him, leaving behind a hollow shell of a man. As for me, I found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served, that the man who had so callously betrayed me had finally reaped the consequences of his actions. It was a small victory, to be sure, but one that filled me with a newfound sense of strength and resolve. The road ahead might still be long and uncertain, but for the first time, in what felt like an eternity, I could see a glimmer of hope on the horizon. A chance to rebuild, to start anew, and to reclaim the life that had once been so cruelly stolen from me. The day my divorce from Todd was finally finalized, I expected to feel a sense of relief, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Instead, as I stood outside the courthouse, the crisp autumn breeze whipping through my hair, I was overcome by a strange mix of emotions: sadness, anger, and a profound sense of loss. This was the end of an era, the closing of a chapter in my life that had once held so much promise. The dreams Todd and I had shared, the future we had so carefully planned, all of it now reduced to a stack of legal documents and a judge's solemn pronouncement. "Are you okay?" Jenna's gentle voice broke through my reverie as she approached, her warm hand finding mine in a comforting embrace. I forced a smile, blinking back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "I'll be fine. It's just a lot to process." Jenna nodded in understanding, her own eyes shimmering with a mixture of sympathy and pride. "You've been through hell, Marlene, but you came out on the other side stronger than ever." Her words struck a chord within me, and I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The nights spent poring over financial records, the countless hours spent strategizing with Rachel, the confrontations with Todd and his mistresses. Each step had been a crucible, forging me into a woman I scarcely recognized. Gone was the naive, trusting wife who had so blindly followed the path laid out before her. In her place stood a woman tempered by the fires of betrayal, a warrior who had stared down the ugliest depths of human deceit and emerged victorious. As I looked back on the wreckage of my former life, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. The pain, the heartbreak, the rage, it had all been worth it, for it had revealed a strength within me that I never knew existed. "You're right, Jenna," I said, squeezing her hand in gratitude. "I am stronger now, and I have all of you to thank for that." A warm smile spread across her face, and in that moment I knew that no matter what lay ahead, I would never be alone. The bonds forged in the fires of this ordeal were unbreakable, a sisterhood born of shared struggle and unwavering support. In the days and weeks that followed, I found myself slowly but surely reclaiming the pieces of the life that had been shattered by Todd's betrayal. With the financial settlement secured, I was finally able to breathe freely, unburdened by the weight of his deceit. Bit by bit, I began to rebuild, exploring new interests and rekindling long-forgotten passions. The accounting firm I had once abandoned in pursuit of Todd's dreams welcomed me back with open arms, and I found myself relishing the familiar rhythm of crunching numbers and analyzing spreadsheets. But even as I immersed myself in work, a part of me yearned for something more. A connection. A chance to open my heart once again to the possibility of love and companionship. It was during a chance encounter at a local coffee shop that I met him. A kind-eyed stranger whose warm smile and easy laughter immediately put me at ease. As we fell into easy conversation, I found myself captivated by his gentle spirit and unwavering integrity, qualities that had been so sorely lacking in my previous relationship. Slowly, cautiously, I began to let my guard down, allowing myself to be vulnerable in a way I hadn't been in years. And though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that this time I would walk it with my eyes wide open, my heart fortified by the lessons of the past. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a future unfurling before me, one filled with promise and possibility. The shadows of Todd's betrayal still lingered, but they no longer held the power to consume me. I was free at last to embrace the life I had so longed for, a life lived on my own terms, guided by the unwavering strength that had carried me through the darkest of times. And as I stepped forward into the unknown, I did so with a renewed sense of purpose, my head held high and my spirit unbroken.